AA Bullets YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
Brian Brooks would wreck a bunch of cars in practice. Why? And Craig Shiftright had this to say to Brian Brooks. One of the cars Brian Brooks wrecked, Matthew Philip Wheel, would be out this race. And Brian Brooks will be suspended for the first 10 races of next season along with this race. In qualifying, Nick Charger would flip on the second lap, and Will Draftrev would show up late to qualifying. Of course he did. Now onto the cars that qualified. Joey Logano, the mean orange car, will start at pole position, and to his outside is Lightning McQueen, 4-time Piston Cup champion. Row 2 has Brad Keselowski, who flipped Carl Edwards in 2009 to his outside. Row 3 has the 2008 Piston Cup champion Cal Weathers and Clint Bokar to his outside. Martin Carrix Jr. will start on the inside of Row 4 with Kyle Buschtire, the mean yellow car, to his outside. Row 5 has Mark Carton and Jimmy Cables. I wonder what they're going to do this race. Row 6 has the 2003 Piston Cup champion Matt Karzith and Casey Corner to his outside. Row 7 has Greg People and Jamie McCarry, who did not qualify last week. Row 8 has Brick Yardley and Dale Earnhardt Jr. to his outside. I wonder how they're going to do this race. Row 9 has the defending champion Bobby Swift, who cannot defend his crown, and TG Castlenut to his outside. The Rocket, Ryan Newcar, will start on the inside of Row 10 with Maury Clutchburn to his outside. Row 11 has Juan Pablo Montoya and Ernie Gearson, whose last win was in 2005. Row 12 has Kevin Carvick and Kurt Buschtire. Don't say a specific word. Row 13 has Brick Hicks and Phil Tankson. Phil Tankson is a very popular Piston Cup racer. Row 14 has James Garrison and Mike Yankee Jr. to his outside. Row 15 has Rex Reveler and Landon Carsell, who surprised everyone in qualifying. Row 16 has Reb Meeker and Chip Gearings to his outside. I wonder if Chip Gearings will finish the race. Row 17 has Jeff Burton the jumper and David Raycar in the number 34. Row 18 has Tony Gassworth and Darren Ledfoot. How did they qualify this far back? Row 19 has Eric Carmarola and Denny Carlin to his outside. I wonder if he'll be mean today. Row 20 has Jamarcus Capehart and David Gillicar. I wonder how they'll do this race. Row 21 has Todd Marcus, who did not skip qualifying, and Doug Throttleman, another jumper. And starting in 43rd is Jack DePost, who finishes ahead of these cars, among many others, who failed to qualify for this race. Some of these cars can blame Brian Brooks for the reason for failing to qualify. And Mike Splatloper is complaining that he didn't beat Nick Charger. Now into the race. Joey Logano would lead the first lap before losing the lead to Lightning McQueen, who would lead until lap 14, would lose the lead to the mean yellow car, Kyle Buschtire, who would lead until lap 48. Rex Reveler would be out on lap 16 because of an engine failure. The ensuing caution would lead to Brick Hicks, Ernie Gearson, Chip Gearings, Todd Marcus all going down a lap. Joey Logano would be 10th as of lap 39. Where he wrecks, who does he wreck? Brick Hicks, Chip Gearings, Ernie Gearson, and then Jack DePost would go down a lap, and then Todd Marcus will go down another lap. But both Jeff Burton and Doug Throttleman, the jumpers, would avoid the wreck. How? Then Ryan Newcar would rocket up to the front, leading on just lap 48 before he'd lose the lead to Darren Ledfoot, who would lead for 20 laps before Lightning McQueen would retake the lead, leading until lap 74 before the mean yellow car would retake the lead, leading all the way until lap 116, where Martin Carrix Jr. would take the lead from him, leading for 10 laps before Darren Ledfoot would retake the lead, leading until lap 127 before Cal Weathers would take the lead for himself, leading for just 2 laps before Lightning McQueen would retake the lead for 2 laps before Matt Karzith would take the lead from him, and then lead 2 laps before losing the lead to Ryan Newcar, who would lead another 2 laps before losing the lead to Kyle Buschtire. who would lead more than 2 laps, leading 12 laps, before Lightning McQueen would retake the lead, leading all the way until lap 157, where Kyle Busch Tire would be 8th as of that lap, where he wrecks. Who does he wreck? Mike Yankee Jr. Why, you mean yellow car? And then Cal Weathers would take the lead after the restart, leading for 2 laps before Casey Corner would take the lead from him, leading for 7 laps before the mean yellow car would retake the lead, leading all the way until lap 199. In the meanwhile, Doug Throttleman would be out on lap 183 because of an engine failure, and then Jack DePost would get back on the lead lap on lap 186. 2 laps later, Todd Marcus would get one of his laps back on lap 188. Then Casey Corner would take the lead on lap 200 and lead for 2 laps before Lightning McQueen would retake the lead, leading for 11 laps. But Joey Logano would be 25th as of lap 213, when he wrecks Phil Texan. Why? And he went airborne too! James Garrison, Jack DePost, David Gillicar, David Raycar, and Landon Carcel would all go down a lap. And Jeff Burton would jump over the wreck again. Then Kyle Busch Tire would lead the next 40 laps after the restart. Then James Garrison would get back on the lead lap on lap 221. And also, Jack DePost would be 35th as of lap 224, where he'd wreck Joey Logano. Hooray for Jack DePost, as Piston Cup fans cheered Jack DePost, but also Murray Clutchburn's pit crew, because it means Murray Clutchburn can finish in the top 20 because Joey Logano wrecked out. And Jack DePost would get back on the lead lap on lap 230. Who takes the lead though? Lightning McQueen would take the lead on lap 254 and lead for 2 laps before Brick Yardley would take the lead from him, leading until lap 269, where another green car, Darren Leadfoot, would take the lead from him, leading until lap 276 before Cal Weathers would retake the lead, leading all the way until lap 281. But Brad Keselowski would take the lead on lap 281, leading for 2 laps. Then Casey Corner would take the lead from himself on lap 283, leading for 7 laps before Lightning McQueen would retake the lead, leading for just 1 lap before Cal Weathers would take the lead, leading for the next 7 laps until lap 298, where Todd Marcus would be out because of an engine failure. And then, after the restart, apparently on the same lap Kyle Busch Tire would retake the lead. But on lap 314, Lightning McQueen would retake the lead, leading for another 2 laps before Kyle Busch Tire would retake the lead once again, leading all the way until lap 348. Then Clint Bokar would take the lead for himself, leading for the next 3 laps. But on lap 351, Kyle Busch Tire would be back in the lead, where he'd lead all the way until lap 389. And then Eric Carmarola would take the lead, and then lead until lap 392. Somehow! But Kyle Busch Tire would be back in the lead on lap 392, and then lead for the next 3 laps. Then Darren Leadfoot would push Kyle Busch Tire out of the way on lap 395, and then take the lead from himself, leading until lap 399, where Denny Carlin would shove Darren Leadfoot out of the way on lap 399, allowing Denny's teammate Kyle Busch Tire to retake the lead. But before lap 399 was over, Murray Clutchburn would take the lead for the first time this race. Then Jimmy Cables would take the lead and then lead the field into lap 400. Then, later that lap, Lightning McQueen would take the lead, leading until lap 403, where Brad Keselowski would shove Lightning McQueen on lap 403. And then Craig Shiftright would say this. Well, I mean, Brad Keselowski is his racer. Then, as a result, Lightning McQueen would go from 1st to 31st on lap 403. And this allows Brad Keselowski to take the lead, leading for 12 laps. But then, Casey Corner would take the lead on lap 415 and lead for 2 laps. But then, Reb Meeker would be out on lap 417 because of an engine failure. This engine failure would result in Juan Pablo Montoya, Jeff Burton, Jamie McCarry, Murray Clutchburn, Denny Carlin, T.G. Castlenut, and Bobby Swift all going down a lap. And then Kyle Busch Tire would retake the lead, leading for 10 more laps before Jack DePost would be second as of lap 428, where he'd wreck Kyle Busch-Tire, the mean yellow car. Hooray! And Denny Carlin would go down another lap. Then, Brad Keselowski would take the lead after the restart and lead into lap 436, where Maury Clutchburn would get back on the lead lap on lap 431. And Jack DePost would take the lead, leading for 9 laps before Cal Weathers would take the lead once again. And then, Cal Weathers would keep the lead until lap 448, where James Garrison would take the lead and lead for 4 laps before Ryan Newcar would retake the lead, leading for another 6 laps before Jamie McCarry would get back on the lead lap on lap 458. Matt Karseth would be the car taking the lead, leading until lap 461, where he'd lose the lead to Cal Weathers, and he would lead for 9 laps before lap 470, where Darren Ledfoot would retake the lead. He would lead until lap 475, where Brick Yardley would take the lead from himself, leading until lap 477, where Jamarcus Cakart would take the lead. He would lead until lap 479 before Brad Keselowski, his teammate, would take the lead for himself, leading for 2 more laps before Dale Earnhardt Jr. would take the lead for himself, leading all the way until lap 484 before his teammate Casey Corner would take the lead once again, leading until lap 487, where Greg People would take the lead for himself, leading for 2 laps. Kurt Busch-Tire would take the lead for himself on lap 488, but his former teammate Brad Keselowski would retake the lead on the next lap, leading until lap 491, where Jimmy Cables would take the lead from him. He would lead until lap 494, where Clint Bocart would take the lead for himself, and then lead until lap 497, where Brick Yardley would take the lead, leading for 2 laps. But Jack DePost would take the lead on lap 497, and before the lap was up, Brick Yardley would retake the lead, leading the field until lap 498. And then James Garrison would take the lead out of turn 2. Then, Lightning McQueen would come back to the front just before turn 4. But Brad Keselowski would fail to wreck Lightning McQueen on the final lap. And TG Castlenut would get back on the lead lap on the final lap. And then Lightning McQueen would cross the finish line in first, being the winner of the 2012 LA 500. With Brick Yardley finishing second this race, Jimmy Cables third, Clint Bocart fourth, Ryan Newcar fifth, Greg Peoples sixth, Martin Carx Jr. seventh, James Garrison eighth, Jack DePost ninth, and Jamarcus Cakart rounding out the top 10. And Jamie McCarry would be the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing 25th this race. Now, here is the full race standings. I have just gone over the top 10, but this greatly helps Jimmy Cables, Ryan Newcar, Greg People, as well as Clint Bocart in the point standings. James Garrison, Jack DePost, and Jamarcus Cakart were surprising additions to the top 10, denying Cal Weathers a top 10 finish in this race. Eric Carmarola finishing 12th was also a surprise. Here's Kevin Harvick in 13th, Kurt Busch-Tire in 14th, and then Dale Earnhardt Jr. in 15th this race. With Carl Edwards finishing 16th, his season hasn't been the best, but he did beat Brad Keselowski, who was hoping to win his very first Piston Cup. Darren Ledfoot disappointed by finishing 18th. Mark Carton finished 19th this race. Casey Corner would round out the top 20. TG Castlenut just got back on the lead lap, but he had time to pass Tony Gasworth and Matt Karseth, 2 cars that are hoping to finish in the top 10 in points. Maury Clutchburn would finish 24th this race, just ahead of Jamie McCarry. Jeff Burnton and Bobby Swift were unlucky to finish this race 1 lap down. Same with Landon Carsell, who somehow beat Juan Pablo Montoya in this race. David Raycar rounds out the top 30, with David Gillicar finishing 31st, just ahead of Denny Carlin, who's down 2 laps. At least he finished on the track. His teammate Kyle Busch-Tire was wrecked out on lap 428, with Reb Meeker and Todd Marcus also having engine failures. Joey Logierno finishes 36th, which means he won't be finishing in the top 20, even though Phil Tankson finished behind him. Doug Throttleman would finish 38th in this race, just ahead of Mike Yankee Jr., who at least made 100 laps. Brick Hicks, Chip Gearings, Ernie Gearson, And also, Rex Revler, who finished dead last this race. Lightning McQueen wins the 2012 Piston Cup! Now, let's see the top 40. Cal Weathers finishes second to Lightning McQueen once again, with Brad Kozlowski in third. Greg People had a very good season, finishing fourth in points, with Clint Bokar rounding out the top 5. Kevin Karvik had a decent race, so he finished ahead of Tony Gasworth and Matt Karzeth, despite not leading any laps. Matt Karzeth finishes 8th, just ahead of Jimmy Cables, who's also had his best season, getting his very first top 10 points finish. Bobby Swift, last season's champion, will round out the top 10, just ahead of Dale Earnhardt Jr., who is ahead of Denny Carlin, as Dale Earnhardt Jr. was more consistent. Brick Yardley would finish 13th this season, just behind Denny Carlin, and then Ryan Newcar finished behind him. Martin Carrix Jr. finished 15th, Casey Corner 16th. Carl Edwards had a bad season, finishing 17th this season, but he's still ahead of the mean yellow car, Kyle Busch-Tire. Maury Clutchburn didn't just finish in the top 20, he didn't finish 20th, he finished 19th, his first top 20 points finish in quite a few seasons. And Phil Tankson would round out the top 20. T.G. Castlenut would beat Joey Logierno to 21st position. Joey Logierno only barely beat out Jeff Burnton. Doug Throttleman had a very good season, finishing 24th this season, just ahead of Brick Hicks, as Doug Throttleman has gotten more higher finishes, more top 10s. Mike Yankee Jr. plummets to 26th in the points, ahead of Juan Papa Montoya, who did not partake in all 36 races by choice. And Jamie McCarry loses out to him by finishing 28th instead. Kurt Busch-Tire had a terrible season, but he did have a lot of engine failures, so he finishes 29th, just ahead of Reb Meeker and Rex Revler in 30th and 31st, respectively. Ernie Gearson, despite only racing 30 times, finishes 32nd in points, just ahead of Eric Carmarola. This is his first top 40 points finish. Same with James Garrison and Jamarcus Capehart, who also qualified for the top 40. Despite Paul Racedraft missing out on the season finale, he still finishes ahead of Chip Gearings, who qualified for all 36 races, finishing 37th in points. Jack DePost would finish 38th this season, just ahead of Todd Marcus. Jack DePost's points difference between him and Todd Marcus was made during the season finale. And rounding out the top 40 is Sebastian Silva, somehow. But as he was more consistent than the likes of AJ Carmendinger, qualifying for more races, he was able to finish in the top 40. David Ricard did not do enough in the season finale race that he qualified for to pass Sebastian Silva in points, which is why David Ricard misses out on the top 40.
Remember to press the notifications button, which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's as if you subscribed, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
Well, this is the last big video of the year. I'll probably just be making Christmas-related shorts for the rest of the Advent calendar. And also, of course, the New Year video that I make every single year. The 2013 Florida 500 video will be coming out in 2024. On February 24th, 2022, Vladimir Putin gave orders to Russian soldiers to invade Ukraine. On that day, in 2024, it would have marked 2 years since the war in Ukraine has begun. Although the conflict has been going on since 2014, in 2022, it became a full war. Why did Vladimir Putin need to start this senseless war? Did he forget that Russia is the biggest country in the world? And also, the Ukrainian people just want to live in peace and have freedom. It is currently winter, and many Ukrainians are being forced to live in the dark and in the cold because of the war. And millions were forced to flee the country because it was no longer safe to live in Ukraine. We here at the hashtag KABullets YouTube channel stand with Ukraine in their fight against Vladimir Putin's tyranny. And also recognize Ukraine's true borders as shown by this map, which include Crimea, the Donbass, the Zaporizhia Oblast, the Kherson Oblast, as well as the Kharkiv Oblast, which Russia does not rule the entirety of. Vladimir Putin thought this would be an easy war to win, but he was wrong. Because of the tenacity of the Ukrainian people and the bravery of the Ukrainian soldiers, stopped this easy victory from happening. They are holding out for Ukraine to achieve victory. Slava Ukraini! Heroyam slava! Nechai Shvitsya Taretsia! Ukraini Peremoha! Glory to Ukraine! Glory to the heroes! May Ukraine be granted victory very soon!